I don't know what happened, but my voice sounds terrible right now, but I'm just gonna plow straight ahead. So I made a recent video about my new oldest Marvel comic, and it was Tales of Suspense issue 38, the one that came out right before the debut of Iron Man. And I'm gonna try something new here. So I have a lot of digital scans of comics, and I'm gonna show them to you on my iPad because I went ahead and tried reading them, and boy, this was such an enjoyable experience. It makes me wonder why I even own original comics. So we're going to lay some groundwork here. The company, Marvel Comics, started out as Timely Comics in 1939. This is in the wake of the explosive success of Superman and the mad dash for everybody and their uncle to put out superhero comic books. Now, this Timely Comics era lasted a decade, August 1939 to August 1949. We begin with Marvel Comics issue 1 and we go to Captain America Comics issue 74. Then the company rebrands itself and it becomes Atlas Comics. This is basically from 1950 to 1960. So another decade. These are mostly horror, war, western, and romance comics. And then in 1961, with the debut of Fantastic Four issue 1, we get the Marvel Comics era, which is continuing till this day. But prior to the Marvel Comics era, right at the tail end of the Atlas Comics era, we have a change that happens in 1957. Basically, distribution problems caused Atlas Comics to go from 79 publications a month down to 8. The following year, in 1958, Stan Lee's workhorse artist Joe Maneely dies, and Jack Kirby and Steve Ditko return to the company. The following year, the final year of the decade, 1959, with a cover date of January, the science fiction books begin. Right here with Tales of Suspense, issue 1, and we also had Tales to Astonish, issue 1. Those two titles, along with Journey into Mystery and Strange Tales switching from horror comics to science fiction, establishes the landscape of the comic book scene just prior to the return of the superheroes. But it only lasts a year because in 1960, those 4 science fiction books I just mentioned become monster books. And so that's where you get your mixture of the Fantastic Four, a science fiction-based take on the superhero genre, battling monsters. And so right now, we're going to go ahead and look at the first 10 issues of Tales of Suspense. All of the plots herein are by Stan Lee, and the scripts are by his brother, Larry Lieber, unless otherwise noted. This first issue was released in September of 1958, and the cover artist is Don Heck. Now, the copyright on this comic was not renewed after 28 years, so this issue went into the public domain in 1986. Here we have The Strangers of Space by artist Al Williamson. Alien worlds, space stations, spaceships. Looking very Flash Gordon. A spaceship has landed, the door opens, and out comes the alien. And in a twist ending, he had disguised his appearance from this so he could be accepted. All of these stories have a twist ending, and they're all very reminiscent of the Twilight Zone. This text story, The News Hound, is reprinted from Strange Tales, issue 50, from June of 1956. And now we have I Dared Explore the Unknown Emptiness by artist Don Heck. Again, spaceships, Flash Gordon-style space explorers, alien monsters, ray guns, and again, a twist ending. The Day I Left My Body by artist John Buscema. So this guy gets shot in prison. He's left his body. He is a ghost. And it's a basic science fiction tale told in the modern day or contemporary times. It had a twist ending as well, as all of them do. He fled in the night. Now this story would later be reprinted in Kull the Destroyer, issue 13 in January of 1974. The writer and artist of this is unknown. but you can see it looks like a tale of old. It's really a modern day guy dreaming of wishing that he lived in the olden times when he could be a warrior instead of a cubicle worker. And lastly, we have Prisoner of the Satellites by artist Steve Ditko. A meteor shower, meteors swarming around him, shrinks him down to miniature-sized. Spaceships, alien worlds, aliens, you get the picture. And again, a twist ending. So that's the theme of all of these. So we're going to blast through the rest. Tales of Suspense, issue 2. This is from November of 1958 with a cover by artist Steve Ditko. Again, the copyright was not renewed and it went into the public domain in 1986. The first story, Invasion from Outer Space, would later be reprinted in the Marvel Monster Bus, Volume 1, in May of 2017, and it is by artist Jack Kirby. Check out the spaceships in the sky. People fleeing in terror. The military gets involved. All-out war and destruction. Scientists at work. And I guess a resolution at the end. Oh yes, a twist ending. It was just a projected photograph. There were no aliens. The scientist was trying to trick the governments into joining together against a common enemy for peace. And it worked. Now we have a text story, The Sorcerer. This was reprinted from Strange Tales of the Unusual, issue 1 from August of 1955. And then we have Trapped in Yesterday by artist Carl Burgos, creator of the original Human Torch. Now we're going to see another common theme. This issue has a time machine, as many of them will. Lowly janitor sneaks into the scientist's time machine, goes back in time, tries to cash in. It's a morality tale. It's kind of funny. You see where a lot of the jokes are coming from. He learns his lesson, but by then it's too late. He's trapped in the past. The Planet That Wasn't There by artist Russ Heath. Spaceships and space cars, space planets and space people, space explosions and space sorrow. And now we have The Secret of Planet X by artist Steve Ditko. And this kicks off another theme we're going to see repeated, the use of Planet X. Now these stories are fun, but if you read a lot of them in a row, it does get repetitive, monotonous, but of course these were not written to be read so many together all at once. They didn't come out that quickly. So if you do this on your own, enjoy it by jumping around. Read an issue here, read some other type of genre, come back, do something like that. Don't do what I did. Don't let me be an example for you. And we finish with A Robot in Hiding by artist Joe Sinnott. Reminds me of Lobot. This is going to be another theme. It's about robots that are being feared and outlawed and have to find a way to be accepted in society, even if it means tricking the humans. And in the end, they always do. And now we've got issue 3 from January of 1959 with a cover by artist John Buscema. We start with The Terrible Time Machine, again a time machine story, and this would later on be reprinted in the Marvel Monster Bus Volume 1 in May of 2017, and this is by artist Jack Kirby. I love the creative coloring. Another use of a time machine to try to cash in and plans go awry, lessons learned, but it's too late. But that's okay. Every couple issues that come out, you're getting a new audience of new children. And you can keep retelling the same stories and it's new and fresh for them. So here we have The Bridge, a text story that is reprinted from Mystery Tales, issue 42, where it was originally titled The Dark Room, and it came out in March of 1956. And then we have The Thing from Planet X by artist Steve Ditko. What did I say about Planet X? A talking plant, alien animals and intelligent plants, plants against people, and a twist ending. Back to our other theme with Robot Hater by artist Paul Reinman. Again, robots trying to be outlawed and trying to find a way to stay in society with a twist ending. Then we have The Haunted House by artist Don Heck. This is more of a horror story, which is a nice little throwback to a genre that is fading away. And we finish with The Aliens Who Conquered Earth by artist Joe Sinnott. Crazy aliens and spaceships and rockets and spacesuits and uniforms and ray guns. And this one ends with a kind of a religious slant. Next, issue 4 from March of 1959 with a cover by artist Jack Kirby. We start with The Invisible Army, which would later on be reprinted in the Marvel Monster Bus Volume 1 in May of 2017, and this is by artist Joe Sinnott. This is about a scientist that creates an invention that the military wants to use. A lot of stories are like this, and of course they end in a twist and a moral to learn. A tech story called Snowstorm, and One of Our Spacemen is Missing by artist Jack Kirby. Cool alien worlds, a team working together in blue uniforms, and yellow backpacks. They had a limited color palette, but they do get creative with it. This kind of looks like an unmasked Doctor Doom with a slightly grown-up Johnny Storm, but whatever. Now we have The Voice of Doom by artist Carl Burgos. This kid is picking up the sounds of a war over his ham radio, and he is imagining everything taking place in this battle he is hearing play out in real time, only to find out, well, no, he doesn't find out, but the reader does. It was just a nearby ant pile. That's an ending I didn't see coming. Beware of the Robots by artist Al Williamson. Aw, look at him walking the doggy. This robot story is like all the previous ones, but it is cool to look at the art of Al Williamson. One of Us is a Martian by Steve Ditko. Looks like the ancient one from Doctor Strange. It's more fun to read these than to, show them to you, I guess. Here we go, issue 5 from May of 1959 with a cover by artist Jack Kirby. I Became a Human Robot by artist Joe Sinnott. This would later be reprinted twice. The first time in December of 1965 in Fantasy Masterpieces issue 1, and later in May of 2017 in the Marvel Monster Bus Volume 1. Another robot tale with aliens and spaceships. It's all the same. A text story called The Masterpiece. I Fought the Tyrannosaurus by artist Steve Ditko. Now this looks a little different. So this is kind of cool. Explorers find a giant egg. Out of the egg hatches a Tyrannosaurus, and terror is unleashed. So there you go. Thank you, Steve, for a different kind of story. But you know what it is? Kind of like a precursor to the monster tales to come. I Walk Through Walls by artist Paul Reinman. Another scientist at work creates a device that allows him to pass through walls. He uses it to commit crimes, and a trap is laid and he's caught. I Traveled Through Time by artist Carl Burgos gives us another story about a time machine, and you already know how it's going to end. I Was Trapped in the Tunnel to Nowhere. So we've got the monster stories creeping in. The transition begins. We had a horror story holdover. We've got monster stories creeping in, and a lot of science fiction stuff. Tales of Suspense, issue 6 from July of 1959. With a cover by artist Jack Kirby. I Hear It Howl in the Swamp by artist Steve Ditko. This would later be reprinted in the Marvel Monster Bus Volume 1. And it's a monster tale. Well, that's good, because there's only so much science fiction you can take. Of course, there's only so much monsters you can take, and so much horror, or any of it. Even there's only so much superheroes you can take, so I like when it bounces around amongst the different genres. Text story, Lady Luck. I don't read the text stories. I Was Captured by the Cyclops by artist Don Heck. A monster tale. Kind of looks like Sinbad. I'm sure this was inspired by The Seventh Voyage of Sinbad by Ray Harryhausen, which would have been out this year, 1959, right? That's when it came out. Or it's got to be right around that time. I guarantee this was inspired by that movie. There's no way it wasn't. And yes, of course, it is the tale from Homer. It's got all of it there. But why is it in this comic right now? Because of that movie. Now this one is very interesting. The Mutants and Me by artist Joe Sinnott. But as I've said before, these ideas come from the mind of Stan Lee. And then the dialogue is written by his brother. Why is it interesting? Because this is Stan's idea of mutants, years before he would create the X-Men. It is a story about people born with powers that they don't know they have, and they manifest at some point, and they have to stay in hiding because they would be feared and chased. It is the X-Men, but just with regular people. There are no superheroics here. This is the prototype of it. And I would not be surprised to see if the mutant in this story came back at some point in an X-Men comic. And if he didn't, boy, that'd be a shame. Someone should have done that. Who Hides Beneath My Mask by artist Dick Ayers. So I like this. We're really kind of out of the realm of the sci-fi stuff again. And this looks like a horror story almost. And we go right into The Luna Lizards Had Me Trapped by artist Jack Kirby, giving us another monster story. But it's also science fiction. Look, they're on the moon. Spaceships. Spacesuits, monsters, but they're monsters on the moon. That's the twist. At least you think it is, but it's not. The real twist is they're not monsters. They're nice and peaceful, and they're just trying to communicate. Twist ending. And now we got issue 7 from September of 1959 with another cover by artist Jack Kirby. You can see he's really taking over cover art duties of all the issues, and later on he'd basically be a one-man show for all of Marvel Comics as far as art and storytelling, while Stan continues on giving the seeds and sprinkles of all the story ideas. I Come from the Shadow World by Steve Ditko. This is kind of a neat story because it's really different from everything else in here. It is kind of a Twilight Zone type of episode, but I don't really know what to categorize it in. Monster, sci-fi, I don't know. It's got its own little unique twist to it. And it would be reprinted twice. First in Chamber of Chills, issue 14 in October of 1974, and later on in the Marvel Monster Bus, volume 1. And it has a twist ending at the end, or not really a twist ending, it has a nice solution. I like it. It's cool. And here we have the text story, Odd Skills, which was reprinted from Journey into Mystery, issue 34, from January of 1956. And now this is reminiscent of one of the stories that I showed in Tales of Suspense, issue 38. But here we are 31 issues prior to it with I Know the Power of the Genie by artist Don Heck. And this would be reprinted later on in Crypt of Shadows, issue 15 in October of 1974. This little girl gets a genie to grant all her wishes, and they come true, but there are consequences. She learns her lesson, and all's well that ends well, or something like that. My Name is Robot X by artist Paul Reinman. This time it isn't Planet X, it's Robot X, but it's another robot story. And it's a morality tale where a human uses his robot to do things he shouldn't, and the robot revolts. I was trapped inside of The Martian Maze by artist Steve Ditko. This would later be reprinted in Tomb of Darkness, issue 15, in April of 1975. So we are back to the science fiction type stories, but not for long, because we end with I Fought the Molten Man Thing by artist Jack Kirby. Jack bringing the monster stories, and this would later on be reprinted in Journey into Mystery, Volume 2, Issue 15, in November of 1974, and again in Monster Menace, Issue 1, in October of 1993. That brings us to Tales of Suspense, Issue 8 from October of 1959, with another cover by artist Jack Kirby. Monstro, the Menace from the Murky Depths. Another monster story by artist Jack Kirby that would later be reprinted in the Marvel Monster Bus, Volume 1. And I think the comics were just reflecting what was in the movies of the time, as all entertainment does, I assume. So we've got the story of Sammy Snork by artist Bill Everett, creator of Namor the Submariner. Check out the coloring choices for this. This is a science fiction story. Ooh, now that might be my favorite panel just because of the way they colored it for the lighting of his cigarette. Twist ending, and this looks more like one of those pinup pages than the first page to a new story. This is I Am the Changing Man by artist Steve Ditko. So Steve is kind of doing the science fiction stuff while Jack does the monster stuff. It's a good mix. Very interesting as well. And another text story, The Recipe, which is reprinted from Marvel Tales issue 150 from June of 1956. And now we've got The Runaway Planet by artist Doug Wildey. Doug Wildey would then create Johnny Quest! And it's a story from the classroom with a college professor, spaceships, and a twist ending. It Walks by Night by artist Don Heck. This story brings us our very first two-parter, with the sequel story coming in the next issue. Again, it's another robot story with all of your science fiction tropes. And this guy with his cool costume and cape, love it. We're getting near the end here with issue 9 from December of 1959 with another cover by artist Jack Kirby. I Saw Diablo, the Demon from the Fifth Dimension. Another monster story by artist Jack Kirby, which would later be reprinted in Monsters on the Prowl, issue 50 in July of 1974, and again in the Marvel Monster Bus. It's a creative story, but the ending is really weak. But the mercenary in this story is revealed many decades later to be Ulysses Bloodstone in the Marvel Universe from the Werewolf by Night comics. And a text story, The Mirror, which is reprinted from Marvel Tales, issue 143 from November of 1955, and that brings us to The Wrath of Shandu by artist Doug Wildey, and I love the coloring. Very cool. I do love Doug Wildey. This would later be reprinted in Weird Wonder Tales, issue 7 in September of 1974. And it's more of a, I don't know, what is the genre for a Twilight Zone type of story that doesn't have monsters, it doesn't have science fiction, it doesn't have horror, it doesn't have superheroes. This is like, it's got magic or mental powers, and secrets and contemporary people. Okay, now we've got Time on My Hands by artist John Forte, another time machine story. Another guy sneaking on board someone else's time machine and screwing up. That brings us to Earth Will Be Destroyed by artist Steve Ditko. And this would later be reprinted in Crypt of Shadows, issue 19 in June of 1975. Steve with the sci-fi, and another twist ending, which is kind of funny. And we end that issue with The Return of the Living Robot. This is the follow-up to the story from the previous issue by artist Don Heck. And you know what? I like Don Heck. He's a cool artist. And I like this story. I love the two-parter. It's just awesome. And now we come to the end of our time here with Tales of Suspense, issue 10, from February of 1960, and a cover that was penciled by Jack Kirby and inked by Steve Ditko. And I must say, would have really jumped off the shelves at me if I was alive 14 years before I was born. I brought the mighty Cyclops back to life. So again, we have another Cyclops tale, right out of the Greek myths, only this one is clearly not inspired by a recent Ray Harryhausen film of the time. Look at that page. Holy cow. Beautiful. This story would later on be reprinted in Where Monsters Dwell, issue 1 from January of 1970, and again in the Marvel Monster Bus, volume 1. And it is drawn by Jack Kirby. And it's a lengthy one. Now we've got the text story, Out of the Jungle, which is reprinted from Journey into Mystery, issue 4 from August of 1952. That's our furthest throwback in any of these issues. And now we've got I Was Trapped in Nightmare Valley by artist Paul Reinman. This would later on be reprinted in Where Monsters Dwell, issue 4 from July of 1970. And it's kind of a horror twist story. Yeah. The trees come to life. It's kind of cool. And now we've got Behind My Door Waits Medusa by artist Steve Ditko with a very interesting looking illustration. It's going to be another horror type story, but that's kind of cool coming from Steve because he was doing a lot of sci-fi, but horror fits him as well. Which is great for when, he would later be on Spider-Man and Doctor Strange. Another twist ending. I like it. And then we end the whole thing with I Am the Shaggy Creature by artist Don Heck. I like that panel. Telling you, Don Heck is really cool. So this is, again, look at that panel. This guy's a genius. This is going to fall into that Twilight Zone genre that I haven't come up with a name for. It ends with a twist and a moral to be learned. So what did you think of this? Should I make more videos like this where I cover a lot in one video? Did I cover this in a way that you would care to watch? Did any of you sit through this whole thing? Did you enjoy it? Give me some feedback. I liked reading it. I'm going to continue reading stuff whether I make videos of it or not. But if you want me to share it, hey, I will. Until next time. I don't understand the way you think, saying that she's yours, not mine. Sending roses and your silly dreams, really just a waste of time. Because she's mine, the doggone girl is mine.